Going to talk about refugees, and I'm going to talk about Suella Braverman's statement to the UN, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm reading from The Guardian. The UN rebukes Suella Braverman over her attack on the Refugee Convention. The UNHCR defends the 1951 Convention after the UK Home Secretary's speech on uncontrolled illegal immigration. The UN's refugee agency has rebuked Suella Braverman after she claimed that world leaders had failed to make wholesale reform of human rights laws because of fears of being branded racist or illiberal. Now let's just do a gut check, a gut instinct check. Is that wrong? Do we actually not think that the reason why we don't have a more in-depth discussion about refugees and immigration in the UK is because of the fear of being accused of being racist? Everybody knows that this debate and this conversation gets shut down too quickly because anyone who tries to talk about it is accused of being a racist. As I am sure someone will accuse me of being a racist for trying to talk about the subject of mass immigration and refugees. So actually Suella Braverman is correct in stating that world leaders won't debate this topic because they are scared of being accused of being a racist. The UNHCR issued a highly unusual statement on Tuesday defending the 1951 Refugee Convention and highlighting the UK's record on asylum claim backlogs. It came after the Home Secretary refused to rule out leaving the convention and said that the international community had collectively failed to modernise international laws. I want to say, I'm talking, bro, afterwards. Hello, yeah, afterwards, when I've finished. But it's a long talk. So I'll take it in sections. Bro. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say that Suella Braverman is right. The 1951 Convention concerning human rights is out of date and doesn't fulfill its purpose. Why doesn't it fulfill its purpose? It doesn't fulfill its purpose because we know that there are economic immigrants using that convention to claim refugee status when really their motivation is to escape poverty, not the things that are defined as refugees. You can't claim refugee status because you're trying to flee poverty. It goes on. And I also want to say that she's right in saying that the United Kingdom should leave the convention because it no longer works for the UK. We have mass, uncontrolled, unfiltered immigration into the UK that has no brakes and no filter, meaning that along with some genuinely desperate individuals, we're also sucking in the world's criminal element that are fleeing from their own legal systems, and they are fleeing to soft-touch countries like the UK. It also is undermining social stability and law and order in the UK. It goes on in the article. She also claimed that women and gay people must face more than discrimination if they are to qualify as a refugee, a statement that has been challenged by refugee charities. Ladies and gentlemen, I as a Christian face discrimination in the UK because of my faith. Can I now flee to the United States as a refugee? No. I can't. Just because someone says something you don't like, or because someone doesn't let you get that job that you want because of a protected characteristic, does not mean that you can flee as a refugee. There's got to be something more involved than simple low acts of discrimination. Let's just talk a minute about what mass immigration is meaning for the UK. We are receiving in the UK a town's worth of people every single year, and have been for nearly a decade. A town, ladies and gentlemen, of people coming to the UK. These people, many of them, are good people who are just looking to make a better life for themselves. I don't want my words to be generalized into saying that every refugee poses a threat or that every refugee is bad. I am not saying that. Don't characterize my words in that way. However, this mass immigration has brought with it thousands of people that don't share our values, don't share our worldview, don't share our outlook on life, don't care for our way of life. They want to change our laws so that they fit Sharia law, in which Christians will be made second-class citizens, in which Jews will be made second-class citizens, in which homosexuals who practice will be killed, in which democracy is undermined. Sharia law and the Western legal tradition are non-compatible systems of law. We see examples of how it has eroded social stability and law and order in the UK. We have had the systematic rape of tens of thousands of girls in northern England by Muslim grooming gangs. We've had mobs of Hindus and mobs of Muslims fighting on the streets of Leicester. We've had Muslims fighting in East London, Kurd against Turk, Kurd against Syrian. We've had attacks against churches in East London. We've had Muslim terrorists blow up tube lines as they did at Parsons Cross, stadiums as they did in Manchester, try to murder Christian evangelists as they did in this park. And we see that the state cannot or will not control them. Why? Because the liberal state follows a doctrine of liberal multiculturalism. Liberal multiculturalism that every Prime Minister from David Cameron onward has condemned as a failed social policy. Why is it a failed social policy? Because it allows communities to live according to their own values in isolation from one another, in which there is no pressure or expectation to integrate into the community.
What's this all about?
I'm talking, you'll pick it up, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we have corruption at its height in Tower Hamlets precisely because of liberal multiculturalism. We have the fact that Christians are being discriminated against in our communities because the state is weak to impose cultural expectations on those that arrive here. Liberal multiculturalism has led to a point where, according to Pew Research, 30% of the Muslims in the UK support the idea that those who insult Muhammad should be killed. We have documented on Soko films Muslims supporting the reintroduction of slavery, child marriage, the idea of killing apostates here in London, because the state does not demand or expect integration into a community. So, ladies and gentlemen, is there an alternative to this liberal failure? Do we have to keep being liberal on this question, or can we find another way forward? Firstly, let me say, as a Christian, I celebrate a form of multiculturalism that is embodied in the Catholic Church. Catholic with a small c, not a big C. Christians come from every culture, every language, and every ethnicity. Christians are Assyrian. Christians are Somali. Christians are Pakistani. Christians are Indian. Christians are Lebanese. Christians are Egyptian. Christians are Nigerian. Christians are Japanese, Chinese, Aborigine. And as a Christian, I celebrate the idea of a multi-ethnic society. But that multi-ethnic society in the church is united. Why is it united? Because Christians follow a biblical principle, one in which everyone who belongs to the community follows the same laws, the same culture, and has the same doctrines. I see that in Scripture when I read Numbers 15:15. As for the assembly, there shall be one statute for you, and for the alien who sojourns with you, a perpetual statute throughout your generations, as so shall the alien be before the Lord. In Numbers 15:16 it says, there is to be one law and one ordinance for you and the alien who sojourns with you. You shall have one law for him who does anything unintentionally, for him who is native among the sons of Israel, and for the alien who sojourns among them. That's in Numbers 15:29. Deuteronomy 1:16. Then I charged your judges at that time, saying, hear the cases between your fellow countrymen, and judge righteously between a man and his fellow countrymen, or the alien who is with him. So in other words, the Bishop of Welby, who went to the government to tell the government that we should take in refugees and immigrants, should also be saying to the government that we must have one law, one culture, and one doctrine that people must integrate into. It's no good the bishops picking the verses of the Bible that they like and ignoring the verses of the Bible that they don't like. So how, as Christians, can we go about offering a better model? I say to British society, you should do this. 1, you should cultivate a strong sense of British identity that is more than just some simple commitment to democracy, individualism, the rule of law, and the idea of pluralism, because it's that pluralism that is killing you. You need to answer the question, what is British culture? And you must define British culture. And historically, British culture has been Christian. And so therefore, should be a requirement of those that come to this country that whilst they may practice their faith privately and quietly in their own homes, they must not seek his establishment in any respect in the culture. That they must practice their faith without seeking to impose their faith. That they must join with us in celebrating Christ as the national hero. For the humanists, that means celebrating him as a great man. For the Jews, as a great Jew. For the Muslims, as a great prophet. And for the Christians, as the God incarnate. But Christ must become a central element that all of us unite around. And we must all be expected to unite around a Christian sovereign in the King. And those that are not willing to establish themselves on upholding Christian laws and Christian values and commit themselves instead to undermining those laws or those values should be deported. Did you hear that? They should be deported. The condition of remaining in Britain is that you want to be British. If you want to be a Pakistani in Britain, go back to Pakistan. But if you want to be British, you're welcome. We must require that people conform. That means no niqab. It means no adhan that's projected by megaphone. It means that you will have no imposition of halal on schools or on hospitals. It means that you will accept that the church is the established religion and that you will not seek to live under Sharia courts, but submit all of your civil disputes to British courts, and that all Sharia courts, rabbinical courts, will be closed. It's one law for all, or it's anarchy in the future. I am not against people coming here and making their home here. But until you demonstrate that you want to be British, then you are a guest, and we should establish a status as guests to those who come here. But let me be clear, the Bible does teach about welcoming and accepting the refugee. So all of you right-wing political types, I want to upset you as well, because the Bible does not give you an excuse for being xenophobic and for saying that those who are not white aren't welcome, or that those who aren't wanting to be refugees aren't welcome. Let me just show you some verses that demonstrate that. In Exodus 22:21 it says, "But do not mistreat the oppressor, do not mistreat or oppress a foreigner, for you were foreigners in Egypt." It says in Exodus 23:9, "Do not oppress a foreigner, You yourselves know how it feels to be a foreigner, because you were foreigners in Egypt. So every legal right that a British citizen has, a foreigner in this land should have. So the refugee should have the right to work. The refugee should have the right to a home. The refugee should have the right to access benefits at the same level that you do. Because there should be one law for all. It goes on in Leviticus 19:33-34. When a foreigner resides amongst you in your land, do not mistreat them. The foreigner residing amongst you must be treated as your native born. So we cannot make distinctions between foreigners and those who are born here. They must all have the same rights, and all must be subject to the same expectations. And so, yes, I do argue that if you're born in this country and you seek to undermine the commonwealth of this country, you should be exiled. It's not just kicking out foreigners. If you're born in this country and you seek to undermine the laws of this country, the culture of this country, the religion of the country, you too should be kicked out of the country. So don't misunderstand me. Everyone should be subject to the same laws and the same expectations. It goes on in Ezekiel 47:22-23. You are to allot it as an inheritance for yourselves and for the foreigners residing among you and who have children. You are to consider them as native-born Israelites. So someone who is born in this land is a part of this land and should be brought up in the customs, the traditions, the philosophy, the legal tradition, the constitutional customs of this country. We need to give people something to integrate into. This is where Britain and Europe is going wrong. It goes on in Leviticus 25:35-37. If any of your fellow Israelites become poor and are unable to support themselves among you, help them as you would a foreigner or a stranger. The word stranger is the word xenos, from which we get the word xenophobia. The Bible strictly condemns xenophobia. However, as I showed from earlier verses, the Bible says that the xenos must follow the laws of the land. And so I say, and this is why, ladies and gentlemen, that the Crusader states, when they existed, were able to sustain a population of 30% Muslim without any problems, because the Muslims were expected to follow the same laws as the Christians. But France is struggling with just 10%, and we are struggling with just 4%. Why? Because we are following liberal multiculturalism. We don't have to keep following this false doctrine, this error. There is an alternative. I've laid it out for you. Create a strong identity and then expect everyone to integrate. Those that do can stay. Those that don't must leave, whether they are born here or not.